Hello, good morning. Happy Austin Startup Week. How's everyone doing this morning? We have coffee on your way in if you need to grab some coffee. Also some bagels. I think our student startup showcase is slowly winding down, so if you were able to walk through, thank you, thank you. We're so excited to kick off the day with such an awesome conversation filled with incredible innovation leaders, people who are doing amazing things on college campuses here in Austin. And we felt like it was important to bring that conversation here to you during Austin Startup Week of the synergy going on between the Austin startup ecosystem and all of these incredible universities across the ecosystem. My name is Ashley Jennings. I'm one of the program managers for the Kelleher Center for Entrepreneurship. We are one of the leading centers on campus for innovation and entrepreneurship. We serve all undergraduate and graduate students. We also help with alum connections as well, and any kind of community outreach we can do and any synergy to be had with the Austin Startup Ecosystem we also are a part of. This is our first ever university track, so hook 'em. We're excited to be the inaugural one this year for ASW. And if you're wondering about resources for the center and a little bit about what we do, feel free to find me after this panel. I want to kick it off with this awesome photo of Bob Metcalf, who was at our UT minor launch. We just launched an entrepreneurship minor here on campus for undergraduate students. So we're excited to talk a little bit about that as well. Let's just, there we go. Great. Okay. I don't know where that headshot came from, Bob. I think I'll kick it off with introductions. To my left, I have Dr. Hector Gomez McFarland, the director of the Center of Entrepreneurship and Innovation at Houston-Tillotson University. Mr. Bob Metcalf, professor of innovation and entrepreneurship here at UT. Dr. Kristen Spindler, director of Incubator CTX and business faculty at Concordia University. And Dr. Melissa Taylor, assistant dean of strategy and planning here at UT. Sorry, David, I totally skipped over you there for a second. Coffee is kicking in. And Mr. David Aldunian, interim dean at the Bill Mundy School of Business and MBA program director at St. Edward's. Also a huge startup champion in town and mentors to many over at Capital Factory. I'd like to just kick it off by kind of introducing yourself and what your role is at your respective university.
Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you, first of all, for the invitation. I'm the director of the Center of Entrepreneurship and Innovation for Houston-Tillotson University. I just joined the team a year ago as a professor too, marketing professor, but now with this new responsibility, and I'm very excited about it. I'm from Mexico, that's why I have this accent. I've been here for 13 years as an entrepreneur, so I have experience in technology entrepreneurship, living the experience of being an entrepreneur. So that's...
I'm Bob Metcalf. I'm from New York, which is why I have this accent. I have the same job that you do. That is, I'm working in entrepreneurship and innovation at the University of Texas. And my particular focus is helping faculty members start companies to have impact with their research results.
I'm David Altunian. I am the interim dean of the business school. I'm assistant professor of entrepreneurship at St. Edward's and longtime tech person. Matter of fact, I was a kid when Dr. Metcalf was running 3Com, and he was a big shot in the tech world, and now he's a big shot in the academic world, so I can't get away from Dr. Metcalf. So whatever you're doing next, I'm going with you.
Why do you want to get away from me?
Great. My name's Kristen Spindler, and I'm the director of the Incubator CTX at Concordia University. I graduated from McCombs about 25 years ago, and my background is in finance and real estate. I'm also an investor and an angel investor, and really passionate about helping entrepreneurs succeed.
Hi everyone, I'm Melissa Taylor. I'm an assistant dean for strategic planning in our College of Natural Sciences. That's the largest college at UT Austin. It houses all of our science and math departments. It's about 12,000 students, and one of the problems I've been strategically challenged to solve over the past couple years is why we are severely underrepresented in the entrepreneurship ecosystem across campus in Austin, why science students, faculty, et cetera, are deterred or not better engaged. So we've made some exciting headway in both faculty and student serving programs that I'm excited to talk to you about through this panel.
Great. I want to kick it off with just kind of talking about the tech surge over the past 5 years and the explosion and why it's important for universities across the country, globally for that matter, to build startup-friendly ecosystems on their respective campuses.
Well, there's many kinds of universities, and some it's a natural and others it's not. In the U.S. we have 100 really first-tier research universities, and those are really good candidates for having active entrepreneurship programs because they're producing new knowledge through their research. So let's be careful. Not all universities are good candidates for this, I would say.
Who would you say are the best candidates for this? Who are examples of the research going on? Because I know you've done a ton at MIT and brought that knowledge here to UT. So let's talk about, I guess, who's doing it well then across the country.
Well, you named them already. MIT, Stanford, Berkeley are all very good at this. And so I try to copy everything that they're doing.
I think this is where we've had debates and discussions for a long time. I think there's a bit of a debate about the term entrepreneurship and what an entrepreneur is. And we look at it as new venture creation is a part of entrepreneurship. And not all entrepreneurship is technology driven. So somebody that starts a new service business or a new type of a food business, CPG, is in our minds an entrepreneurial venture. And so there's some schools that are better at those types of business creation, new venture creation, and there's some that are better at changing the world types of technology changes, which is I think where Dr. Metcalf's talking about. As a liberal arts college, I tell people all the time, we don't have an engineering school. We don't have that type of a research facility. We'll never do that. However, we're a Hispanic serving institution, and our students are likely to create the next type of CPG company, consumer packaged goods, or they're going to create a new type of service business, or they're creating a new method for doing digital marketing. And that's a valid business. If it employs people, it creates new revenue streams, and it creates a new market space, we consider that a valid approach to entrepreneurship. Where I think we get into trouble in universities is when you try to cross over. And actually I'm working on a paper right now about this program we run at UT called SEAL, where we have students that have ideas but no technology next to technology coming out of the labs with not a business case. And what you find is that the technologies without a business case are really coming out of the big research universities, and the entrepreneurship bent is very different than the students that are coming out with, I got an idea for a new type of mobile app. And I think understanding those differences and where those kind of firms should be incubated is really important for a university. That's our perspective.
And I would add, just big picture, as higher education increasingly has to justify its benefit to society and communities off campus, this is a really tangible direct route to exporting the innovation and the expertise on campus to the greater public. And it's something that's buzzy and super popular right now across campuses, across the nation. But it's, really a way to channel and more effectively connect what's happening here with increasing lives touched and greater good.
So Melissa earlier said that the sciences are underrepresented in entrepreneurship. On the other hand, the School of Science has two kinds of departments. There's computer science, and then there's everybody else. And I think you were talking about everybody else, because computer science is overrepresented in entrepreneurship, I think.
Computer science is definitely our outlier. The majority of our students, faculty, departments would not fall in line with the success computer science has had for more technology-driven entrepreneurship programs and just frequency representation among the ecosystem on campus. But we also encompass all of the life science departments. We have astronomy, we have physics, chemistry, human development and family sciences. So using computer science's successes as a model, but also knowing where we need to take a different path because it's not a one-size-fits-all, especially for some of the life sciences that have more time-intensive laboratory components to them.
So I think I agree with my colleagues here. Actually, the university plays a very important role. I was reading an article from Kaufman Foundation, and the result of the research says that the majority of people, you don't need to graduate from college to have your own business, to start a business, but the research says that the majority of successful entrepreneurs have this background. They graduated from college. So why I was also in a reunion organized by the Organization of American States in Brazil, and they were discussing of the importance of entrepreneurship in the economy of the community. And the conclusion was that in developing countries, the failure rates are very high compared to the US in this case and Canada, and that is because the lack of knowledge, the lack of education. So they call it entrepreneurs by need, not by conviction. So that seed of conviction is planted in a university. In our case, we focus on minority groups and women. Those are our target market for our center, and there are many statistics about it that the Black community, the Latino community are not well represented, and we want to give a significant push to these groups in order to contribute even more to our community.
And what are some of those specific initiatives on campus? I kind of want to go down the line and talk about programming initiatives that you're overseeing on campus to instill that entrepreneurial orientation within students, to have a startup-friendly ecosystem. What are some of the things that Houston Tillison's working on right now?
Well, the center is kind of new. We're about to start operation pretty soon, this month. We are signing some agreements with minority group organizations, like the Consulate of Mexico and some other organizations. That is, we're going to be open to the community. The students are very important, but the rest of the community is welcome too. It's very important that we communicate the knowledge that we are generating in our university. So we're going to create training programs and mentoring programs for the students, for other members of the community in these minority groups.
Just another clarification. I just went to an event organized by the city for small business. And there I realized that there's a big difference between a small business and a startup, the terminology. So I'm a startup person. I'm not a small business person, because startups begin with the intention of being huge. They don't start and plan to be small forever, whereas many small businesses are going to be small forever. And so there's a different biology to these startups. And most of the work I do on startups has to do with the Valley of Death. So there's this well-known Valley of Death between successful research and financeable startups. And a lot of people have trouble getting across. Actually, if there's a Valley of Death, I advise you not to ride down into it. But there's a poem that says you should ride down into the Valley of Death. Don't do that. You can build a bridge, you can run around it, but don't ride down into it. So a number of different programs aimed at helping people across this Valley of Death.
And sorry, real fast before we continue on. Bob, you've been with the UT family for a while now. You've kind of helped build out the ecosystem here on campus over the past
8 years.
8 years. Where are we now? How far have we come? I guess, what's that journey been like?
So I moved here from Boston, and the first thing I did was look up the VC firm in town, because I thought they would be a good partner in stimulating entrepreneurship, and that was Austin Ventures. And in my first meeting with them, the founding partners told me they don't do business with the University of Texas. The university is too difficult. It's not worth it. So over the last 8 years, Austin Ventures has mostly gone away now, and now there's a much healthier situation with multiple VCs, and the university has responded. Now, comparatively to 8 years ago, the university is boiling over with entrepreneurship. And it's kind of fun to watch people step on each other's toes and compete and so on.
So on our side, and just to make sure, we don't get into nomenclature debates, our entrepreneurship program is focused on new venture creation. That's our goal, new venture creation. So we have 3 pillars that we focus on. Small and mid-sized business, with the intention they're going to start and not stay small. To his point, there are people that want to do that. We're not interested in the 1 or 2 person landscaping company. We're talking about the person that's trying to create a new disruptive way to do landscaping and hopefully to grow to a good business. That's the first pillar. Second pillar is family business. We find that a lot of business, as a matter of fact, USASB, which is the U.S. Association for Small Business and Entrepreneurship, an academic practitioner conference last year, had one of these as their keynote speaker in South Florida, and it was a restaurateur that has built a fish farm, a ranch, a food production facility. They basically vertically integrated the restaurant business, and actually their supply chain was now bigger than their original family. It was all family run. So family business is the second pillar we focus on. The third is social enterprise, which fits our Holy Cross model. So that's how we do it. We're very clear that we are doing new venture creation as opposed to trying to create the next Facebook. It's great if that happens, but that's not really what we're focused on.
Concordia has been around almost 100 years. In 2026, we're going to be celebrating our 100th year anniversary. We've been out at 620 and 2222 for the last 10 years. On about 400 acres of Hill Country Preserve, the old Schlumberger campus. A few years ago, a wealthy donor gave money to the university to set up our incubator, and we've been in business now a little over a year. We really cater to serial entrepreneurs. Our target market's a little bit older, late 30s, 40s, 50s, typically people who've been in business, been successful themselves, and are starting maybe their second, third, fourth venture, and who live out in our neck of the woods. We also focus on the students. We've had one student startup come through and graduate. They actually decided to go to grad school instead of continuing. But most of our students work with the startups that come in the community, and we're really trying to develop those ties between the students, the community, and focus on that entrepreneurial learning as part of their curriculum. We partner with G51 and Tech Ranch and some other partners as well. And part of that work is developing curriculum and case studies that we can use to teach entrepreneurship. So they both get that education in the classroom and also experiential learning with working with these companies.
In the sciences, there are 2 new efforts I'll speak to. One is faculty serving. It is we found that with the majority of our research active faculty, experimental scientists, they are already in effect running startups, multi-million-dollar research entities that they're continuously hustling for funding to support, managing, defining HR processes and protocols, et cetera. It's not that they don't have an interest or appetite for entrepreneurship, they just don't have the bandwidth necessarily, and or it doesn't fit among their sort of top priorities that they're incentivized to work towards. And so we're creating a new postdoctoral fellowship, which will be a fleet of postdoc students from the sciences, familiar with the science and the research content, but specifically here for 2 to 3 years to work on entrepreneurial efforts related to their labs. And that frees up the burden of falling on the primary investigator. It gives them someone they deeply trust from the science content background. We've also seen, more than 75% of our PhD graduates end up in industry with resounding feedback that they wish they'd had more exposure to industry and entrepreneurship in their doctoral programs in the sciences. We think this is going to be a super competitive and coveted experience for all parties involved. And then for student serving, we're piloting a new program this year called the University of Texas Inventors Program. The word choice was intentional. We actually found entrepreneurial language and lingo to off-put some of our students who either assumed that was a profit-driven, business-centric world that didn't align with their interests and motivations in the sciences, or it was intimidating to them for jargon reasons that they just disqualified themselves. So we had to do this similarly about 10 years ago with research. We couldn't say the word research and had to trick students into realizing they actually had a lot of potential to be great researchers, and launched one of our hallmark programs, the Freshman Research Initiative, as a result. So this program will place students on interdisciplinary teams of working through a semester on a problem statement, entrepreneurial related, that's provided by an external party. That party might be a faculty member on campus whose research has a laundry list of ideas they would love vetted, customer discovery, prototype building, competitive market research, what have you. Would really appreciate a student team working on it. They just don't have the bandwidth. We're also partnering with industry, everything from local artificial intelligence agencies to food startups, and also have a pretty significant partnership with the Department of Defense and the new Army Futures Command here. So they're viewing this as their sort of Hacking for Defense 2.0 course model. We intentionally designed this so students get course credit while pursuing it, and that's because I have a hidden, very strong agenda for access and equity. So being a large, massive college that serves, we're an open college, we serve anyone and everyone at UT, including all the pre-med students, the engineering majors, all of our own majors, etc. We didn't want this to be super exclusive and competitive for a very small select few. So we envision this serving thousands of students, being value added for all of those students, regardless of who goes on to be a career entrepreneur. And as rising tides raise all ships, we also envision this significantly increasing that really competitive top echelon of students that are then competing and being successful for startups and next step programs, whether it's pitch events or incubators or accelerators and whatnot.
What are some of the things students state as being the biggest needs as they're founding a company, or curriculum, special offerings, extracurricular? I guess what should universities be teaching around entrepreneurship as students come to you with new ventures? What are you seeing some of the biggest needs on campus?
Funding. In the same research that I was reading, I found out that the minority groups have less access to funding. And that is something that we're going to work on in the center to help the students and other members, as I said, of the community too in this group. But that is one of the things that we're going to work on. But also in the curriculum of the classes, we gradually going to plant that seed of entrepreneurship in our classes until we have a specific program for entrepreneurship in the university. But right now, I think as a university, being a multidisciplinary hub, we're going to take advantage of that and work with different departments inside the university in order to get this knowledge and help the students. Because we have to develop that spirit. As an entrepreneur too, it's not easy, okay? We have to develop leadership with social projects so they're sensible to the environment and develop this skill of leadership. Okay, so funding in curricula, in teaching certain topics related to entrepreneurship. But I think we have the knowledge inside the university to start promoting this. As I said, not only in the student community, but also outside.
I agree, funding is and then there's two schools of thought about what to do about funding. There's the side that says we need to get more money in town and invite more and yell and scream and berate VCs for not being here. And of course, that induces them to move here. And then, but generally fleshing out the ecosystem. But then there's the other school of thought, which I'm a member of, which says we need better startups. That is, the money will come if the startups were better. So we need to get them the right people in them, help them find customers. So better startups will improve the funding situation, I think.
So I agree with both of those, although I'm a big person on number one there. because I use Metcalfe's law, this is why he's raising it, I think, to show that the size of a funding network has an impact on the amount of funding and we are getting those wins. I think that's been a really good thing. I will say though that while I agree funding's an issue, I also think what's really important if you think about it from the student perspective is what do they need to be successful. And one of the biggest, and I will also say I agree totally with Bob on the differences of these, he's a startup person and I'm a startup person, but we look at different markets. I think what's really important to think about is the type of funding that's needed for the different type of businesses. So the kind of businesses my students do are not going to get VC funding because they're not going to scale as fast or the way that they do. So our students have to understand the financials and accounting and the math to be able to go, because you're in the same boat we are with the funding access. They've got to be able to bootstrap and get to certain points, and they've got to understand the balance sheet and the P&L pretty early on, where when you're going, and when I work with SEAL, it's much more technology driven. We're trying to build plans that show how you can scale this quickly and how more money by the venture community would escalate the growth and the speed of growing big fast. So the type of company makes a big difference on what you focus on. So we spend a lot of time, I think students coming out of high school don't have enough of the basic math skills. And what we're seeing is we're having to do a lot more remedial work to get them to understand basic quantitative methods, then teach them finance, and then teach them how to build P&Ls. And one of the questions I get all the time is what's the difference between this and a BA then, and just general business. The difference in the BA, if you're taking a finance class, you're using historical data and you're learning how to build these sheets. For a startup, there is none of that. So you have to learn how to do market segmentation, market sizing, bottoms up, blank sheet of paper, and that's the kind of stuff we're focusing on. Again, but that's where our students are. We need to get them to be able to get that micro loan or money from their parents and families and friends and angels and be able to just get to a proof point. So I think finance and quantitative skills are really a focus.
For us, I would say mentors and hands-on learning. A lot of our students are gaining valuable skills through working with these companies. In a lot of cases, these founders are experienced CEOs, so they're getting that mentoring. We also have a reservoir of mentors who work with our incubator, who are industry experts across the board who have a ton of knowledge. So that's really helpful. In terms of hands-on learning, our MBAs, for example, are required to do a Capstone project to graduate in their last semester. So they are paired with companies and they do high-level analysis for that project. Our MBAs are all full-time. They work full-time and they go to school Thursday night in about a 5-hour block. So these are, high-paid, high-earning people who are going back to school to get their MBA, and the combined resources of those kinds of teams working with companies is fantastic.
We have a select few students and faculty who understand or want to understand it all, such as market segmentation, but we're trying to reiterate that you don't have to do that and you can still be a successful entrepreneur. So our primary goal is having faculty and students understand the skills needed and then knowing what they don't know and how they can find that elsewhere, and that you don't have to be it all. You don't have to be the CEO and the CFO and the science content expert in order to get this from point A to point B. There are models in which you can partner with those talents and still move forward.
I just want to jump on one thing. One of the things that we're different at our school and our programs, and I think a lot of universities, is we've made the conscious decision not to create our own incubator or accelerator on campus. We've partnered with Capital Factory. We actually sponsor and fund part of Capital Factory, and we work with Impact Hub. Our view is for our students to get the best exposure, we need them in the community. So we actually have seats there at Capital Factory. Tomorrow night, we're taking a group of students, the Student Entrepreneurship Club, hosts their own event. They're going to be doing the startup crawl. We have tables. We try to get our students, even our business school faculty retreat is held at Capital Factory. We want our people to be in the community and our students to be in the community because we think the access to the experts, and we don't want to create another silo in our school. So we have a very conscious decision to try to integrate our people into the community, our students, to give them that exposure.
student startup team success and kind of some of the rising stars, undergraduate, graduate, because I'll be honest, I was siloed downtown in the tech startup ecosystem for years, 3 or 4, I didn't realize even what was going on here on campus, all of the incredible innovation centers and all the research going on. And even as you walk through the hallway on the way in here for our startup showcase, you had companies who, you know, undergraduates have won $75,000 pitch competitions through WeWork, those who have product on shelves in coffee shops around town. So what are some of the success stories that you want to highlight or talk about, or some of the cool research going on campus, on your different campuses?
Anybody want to go? I don't.
Yeah, so yesterday, Jasper Song came to my office. He graduated 5 years ago from your computer science department. And he went through Longhorn startup course that we had and did a startup. He and his wife, she was the CEO, he was the engineer, and they did a company that didn't quite succeed at Longhorn Startup. Then they moved to San Francisco, and he just came back. His company did a 2.5 million seed, has just done I'm not allowed to say, much bigger A round. He's got revenue, 7 digits of revenue, 7 digits of annual revenue. And he came back just to say thank you to the Longhorn startup that got him kicked off. So that's a yesterday afternoon success story.
One of our proudest, what I'll call preliminary success is Alpha Health, which the founder just was named one of the top 25 under 25 in town. And she's the perfect story for a St. Ed student. Both her parents were incarcerated. She's American Indian and Hispanic. She worked her way through school by working at Breckenridge as a pharmacy tech. And in talking to one of the residents there, they both realized that electronic medical records were not really available for their communities, their resource-constrained communities. So with another person who is a Stanford fellow, they created an application and a back-end system for simple EMR for resource-constrained environments. So essentially, there's an electronic medical record that sits on the phone. They have a terminal in clinics, and a patient comes in, it syncs up, and no matter where the patient comes in from, they get the data. Problem is, here in the United States, that would never pass with HIPAA, so they're not in the United States. They've launched, and they have a team, and they're in pilots in clinics in Kenya, which is where the resident here is from, and they've won 3 or 4 major awards, and they funded totally off of their business pitch competition work. And I think, to me, that's a massive success. And they figured a model that works. Now they've got this back end. They're starting to figure out how to use machine learning to do things with the data in the back end. And they have a pretty wide field over, because a lot of the countries don't really have the same HIPAA requirements we do. So that's an example of our kind of student.
Okay, for us, one success story is a company called HopZero. They're a data security company, and they keep data from hopping out to places where it shouldn't be going. One of the founders got his MBA at Concordia, and then they also went through our Venture Forth program that we do. It's like an 8-week boot camp with Tech Ranch. They joined the incubator. They did a demo with our computer science students to sort of let our students sort of kick the tires before they went and did a presentation before the government. They also got one of our MBA Capstone teams working for them to do some market research, and as a result of that, they were giving either gift certificates or donating money to the people who did this survey. And so they actually gave about, I think it was $450 to Water to Thrive, which is one of the companies that works with Concordia. They drill wells in Africa. So, I highlight them because they sort of hit on all cylinders. They're MBA grad, went through Venture Forth, incubator member, used a Capstone team, and now they have raised money, and they're raising more money, and they just got their first paying client, so they're on site with that client. So they're actually getting probably They're growing very, very quickly. They're scaling quickly, which is what we want to see.
So in our case, well, since the operation is about to start, but we have in our students a very strong entrepreneurship spirit. And I ask, every time I start a class in this university, I ask them what they want to do in the future. And I would say 30 to 40% of the students want to have their own companies. And we have some of the students that they already started their businesses with no help from funding or anything like that. We have this case, Hassan. He's a guy from Africa. We have a lot of students from Africa, from Asia start coming. And his brand, Africa, is the name of the brand, as a clothing line of the year in Texas. And it's very curious because this guy, like other students, they're mainly in the clothing industry and the beauty industry. And they're asking questions how to, because most of the cases in the textbooks are about Coca-Cola and hotels, historical data, and they don't have that information as a startup. So they're asking questions how to implement what we're reviewing in class through their businesses. We're not in technology, but innovation is in business models, for example. The way he's doing things is very creative using internet marketing. And so this is one of success stories that we have in HTU.
Based on our numbers and size, I could laundry list a whole impressive group of names that have been successful entrepreneurs that have affiliation with our college or university at some point, but I don't know if that would actually be ethical, because it would be interesting to ask them if that was thanks to their time at UT or in spite of their time at UT. But I think those tides are turning, and I love the story that Bob shared, where we have people actually attributing some of the success and preparation, even if it wasn't for that specific endeavor. And that is, underlines the goal of everything we're doing in the natural sciences right now. I was speaking with a faculty member a few weeks ago who had, much to his surprise, taken an entrepreneurial path, and he participated in the National Science Foundation's I-Corps program, and he said something that's really stuck with me, in that all of the experience in his entrepreneurial training and programming, even though he's still a very research active, traditional tenured faculty member, has completely transformed the way he thinks about his research altogether, whether it's related to entrepreneurship endeavors or not. And that to me is really powerful, and what we're really hoping to move the needle on for students and faculty alike. There will be some big, flashy, sexy wins that come out of it, no doubt, and make fun cover stories, but we're also really think that an entrepreneurial mindset is empowering and will increase the overall quality of science coming out of our college.
Bob said something to me several years ago that kind of stuck with me, and I think we just redid our entrepreneurship curriculum last year, and it played a role in that. And that was, you made a comment of, not everybody should be starting businesses. We have all these startups, and some people just got to work. We got to teach them how to do that. And so we actually redid our entrepreneurship curriculum, and we say, if you don't want to you don't have an idea, there's a lot of startup firms here that need people that understand how to build a pro forma from scratch. See, there's one right there, who know how to do segmentation when there's nothing there. And my career started, I did new ventures inside corporations, and there is that thinking of how do you start with nothing. And so we tell our entrepreneurship students, it's okay, you don't have to start the startup, but he's going to spin out a lot of great companies that are going to need somebody that knows how to do market segmentation or knows how to do pro formas and build these plans, and you're going to have that kind of skill because that's what we're teaching you, and you don't get those in the standard classes. And so, again, we really try to orient ours towards what do students need to be successful when they leave, whether they start a startup or they go work for a startup. We want them to have the skills and tools they need.
I call these people founderati.
Founderati. I'm going to use that term.
Not founders, but people involved in the founding of companies.
Yeah. Well, in that vein, we do the same thing with our students, and we tell them you don't just need a resume, you really need a portfolio of projects that you've worked on. So for example, I launched this website for this startup. This is what I did. This is what it looks like. I did this marketing campaign. These were the numbers. I started sales from zero. I got to here in this amount of time. So these are the kinds of little projects, even if they're internships and they're unpaid and they're getting credit for it and they're working with a faculty advisor, at least they have something that they can say that they did that's discrete that they can show a potential employer.
And to touch a little bit on, kind of communicating that to students, the entrepreneurial orientation, really fostering entrepreneurial orientation and really helping them get the resources and capital they need to be successful. It's a slippery slope though, right? Because you still want them to stay and get their degree and finish school. And historically, you look at, the Stanfords and the Harvards who have had that ecosystem for a while and fostering the dorm rooms to startup kind of mentality. How do you communicate that? How do you create that curriculum out on campus?
I have a rule. I never try to induce anyone to leave school for any reason. And then they throw back Gates, Jobs, Dell, and Zuckerberg, all of whom dropped out. And then I say, name 5 more. So there are exceptional people. You shouldn't base your future on exceptions.
Yeah, I think it's a big challenge. We've had it, even the student I talked about, the last year, MIT brought her out for a camp, and she was off doing these pitches, and she had a hard time finishing, and we really had to work on her to finish her senior year because she had so many opportunities. What I do is there's a chart they use at admissions that shows the unemployment rate and the average lifetime salary for different degree levels. And I say, look at the difference from a bachelor's to no bachelor's. And you want that insurance policy, not only the insurance policy, you want that lifetime earning value. And why would you risk it all for now? So I'm where you are on this. I think that's a disservice we do to students to encourage them, if people are encouraging them not to finish up, because they can do their work, they can do startups and still finish up the work.
I would add to that, the earning income for some coursework but not a finished degree is equivalent to having not started altogether. So those are outlier examples that are fun to reference, but not the norm. And for the faculty perspective, this is exactly why we've created this postdoctoral fellows program. We had heard our faculty say, we thought about creating some sort of sabbatical program where you could take 2 years off and primarily focus on this, but in the context of scientific research funding, it's not realistic that then you could just step right back in and pick up where you left off. So faculty talk about, even in semesters when they take off to go do research abroad, not a lot happens while they're gone, not nearly as much as when they're here. And the funding climate is such that you can't take a pause, a significant pause in which you would need to get something off the ground and then easily come back in. And we didn't want to lose our faculty. And so we found the sort of support of the postdoctoral to be the magic ingredient.
That postdoc program is a fabulous idea. At our 100 research universities, the postdocs are stacking up. It used to be a 1 year, and then a 2 year, and a 3 year. Some of them are there 7 years, and it's because they all want to be professors. But there's no professor job, very few professor jobs, so they're stacking up, and getting them to be startup CSOs and CTOs is a great use of that human resource.
New market disruption and what some of our students are working on in these new markets from, you've got some incredible hardware being created here at UT, robotics, AI, blockchain. How is the Austin ecosystem and the downtown community helping student success, helping partner with your respective universities, whether it's through accelerators, incubators? How is the Austin community partnering with your university to help with that new market disruption?
In our case, we're not on that type of business right now, technology. In my personal experience, I work with Internet of Things. That's the company that I started. But in the case of the university, we're more on a non-technology business, so I couldn't contribute on that answer. But we have computer science in our school, and we're trying to push more on the business intelligence side. But right now we're going to concentrate on some other type of businesses. Okay.
So in education, experiential learning is hot, and doing a startup is an experience. So for example, the Texas Venture Labs goes out to the Austin community and signs up a bunch of startups to turn our students loose on them. So that's one way in which the Austin community helps, by presenting these startups that we can use as experiential learning.
So one of my other roles is I'm on the Greater Austin Chamber Board of Commerce, Chamber Board, and one of the things that we're working on right now is Opportunity Austin. This is addressing Bob's earlier issue about we need better startups in certain areas. And one of the things we're doing with Opportunity Austin is focusing on the segments that we're known for here locally and making sure people know this nationally, and then identifying the areas where there's development going on. So the things that are happening locally that our students can partner on are things like CPG and food products. I see the Food Plus City t-shirts back there, and that's a great program. But there's a lot going on in CPG. One of our biggest venture funds is Cavu. And it's a great space for students to get into and work with easy access to the markets. Then we have infrastructure software, which has been what we call infrastructure platform software, which are the SailPoints, the Trilogies, those kind of companies that are doing enabling software for businesses. That's really big in Austin, but a lot of people have forgotten that was part of our roots. And I think on the development side, we have the VR, AR stuff that's been going on, the AI stuff that's been going on, blockchain. The problem is it's just all real frothy right now. Great place for students to experiment and play with. But we, from a chamber standpoint, that's development long-term, where we're working with firms and trying to do that. And then as a university, we're trying to figure out how to get our students into those areas. Those are probably the big ones for us.
For us, we're a small liberal arts college. We do have computer science as well, but I would say we're focused really more on traditional industries and segments, although we do find that the liberal arts students, just with their training in terms of solving problems, are good at going after some of these newer industries, although it's not really our focus to go necessarily after some of those cutting edge fields, because we're not a research institution.
To Bob's point about experiential learning, or learning outside of traditional classrooms being on the up and up, we have a new entrepreneurship minor on campus, and the last of the course requirements in that minor is a practicum, or something not in a traditional classroom. I think everyone in the Austin entrepreneurship ecosystem is excited about the academic presence of technology and innovation here in Austin, and that's a really nice synergy, but sometimes not always sure of how to tap into that. So the more that we can create these packaged, tangible ways for our students to access those opportunities, or our faculty, the more frequently we'll be able to connect with those industries. We've had partnerships with industry that have served like incubators. We've talked about creating accelerator-like courses for students to take, so thinking outside of the box and yet packaging it in a way that allows students to continue moving towards their degree is important.
One of the things I think we got to be careful about on the university side is, and I say this all the time, when I started motion computing in 2001, there were two things you don't want to tell people you were, because it meant you were unemployed. One is you didn't want to say you were a consultant, and you didn't want to say you were an entrepreneur. Entrepreneur in 2001 was a bad word. Now everybody wants to be an entrepreneur. And I think, I consider a success. I teach an intro to entrepreneurship class, and the end deliverable is they do a business model canvas of an idea, and they have to get out and they have to do all the work. And if half to 3/4 of the students say they never want to start a business because of the experience, I figure that we've done the job right. I want students to understand how hard it is. There's a lot of glamour around it, but honestly, if you want stability and you want a reasonable salary, there's a lot easier ways to do it. Go do an engineering degree. Go do a computer science degree and just code. There's easier ways than trying to do this. And one of the worst t-shirts, and I tell him all the time and he ignores me, is Josh Baer has a "I help people quit my jobs" t-shirt. And I'm like, if you think that, that's because your whole life becomes a job when you do an entrepreneur, when you start a company. It's a lot of work. So students really have to understand what they're getting into when they do that.
And on the practicum side of things, for the new UT minor that we have here on campus, it's incredible to see kind of the synergy going on. We just rolled out a fintech practicum out of Macomb, so we have students working with Ernst & Young on their fintech companies, and then it'll end in a big demo day at the end of the semester. So that experiential learning is so important. I want to leave a few minutes for questions, if there's anyone in the audience who would like to. Yes.
Can I make a comment first?
Yes.
Hook 'em. But one of the changes of attitude I've had over the last 8 years, I started out thinking it was Austin, and now I think it's Texas. That is, the ecosystem that we're all working on is not just Austin, and it's fruitful to include A&M and Rice in this discussion, and then the energy industry, the health industry that are all over in Houston. Aerospace is in Houston. There are these major resources in the state of Texas that we need to learn to bring into our ecosystem. Excuse me for interjecting.
No, it's completely true. The manifesto, right? The manifesto and what Josh talks about. Okay.
This is so great. I love seeing this list and of opportunities to plug in with, I'm one of those people with endless ideas and would love to plug into your practicums, your, all the different, what are the how to connect with you and get the idea, through the first screening so that it can be offered as an opportunity to the students at your different universities.
So another reason it was important for our programs to be credit bearing was so that we have a sort of option A, option B, option A being this is at a minimum how we would get this off the ground, and it would be financially sustainable, built into how we sort of fund and justify instruction on campus in our current model, and it's lean and it's mean, but we're scrappy and we can do it. And then option B being, should we be successful in getting external funding, donors, industry partnerships excited about this, we would love to layer on all these additional components. So building things into your existing infrastructure in a way that you could move forward even if that super pie in the sky awesome connection or resource doesn't happen, I think is really important.
How would an entrepreneur connect with the university to work with students on a project?
So in our school, we have capstones like you do for the MBA program, and you can get in contact with me and I can get you with the professor that does it. There's an application form. The students vote on the capstone projects they want to do. They tend to pick ones that are multidisciplinary so they can get broad experience, but that's one way to do it. The other thing is, we have great resources in town like Capital Factory, the Tech Ranch Campfire stuff that they do. Those are great places to get in and connect as well outside of universities.
Yeah, I would say for us, two ways. We're always looking for mentors in the community who help work with our startups. So that's one way to get involved. Another way is if you are a company and you want to become a member, you can look at our website and apply through that. We have a lot of events open to the community. We do speaker series every month. Those are typically on Wednesdays from 12 to 1. So you can come at your lunchtime. Even if you're downtown, you can make the trek up to Concordia at lunchtime. So those are all ways to get involved with us.
In our case too, although again we're planning right now, but based on my experience and what we want to do and accomplish in the university is also we're looking for mentors. People with experience in entrepreneurship or starting a business. And also if an entrepreneur or a business person wants to come and contact me, and we can arrange some meetings with the students and see the type of project that they want to do with the students. But so it's as mentors, people from the community that want to be mentors or people that are looking to work as a team with the students in our university for a specific business project.
And I would encourage you to cast a wide net and know that it's often not one specific individual or unit that sort of houses everything by design. So there are sort of centers for entrepreneurship that can help triage or serve as clearinghouses for all sorts of experiences. There are individual programs, units, faculty, courses. Each of those might have different point people that you would connect with depending upon what you're interested in. So either doing multiple outreaches and or saying, when you reach out to people, if there are other people you think I might connect with too, I would greatly recommend or greatly appreciate you forwarding this on to them or giving me their names or whatnot.
I just saw this morning, and I can share it, possibly Paul O'Brien, who is at SEO O'Brien, published a list today of incubators, connectors, all this. Was a really extensive list. You may want to go look at SEO O'Brien. I just saw it this morning, and it was excellent.
So as a serial entrepreneur, thank you for all the programs for helping people like myself. Three-time Longhorn graduate, and one of the things, I still serve on ESI and on the advisory council for ESI, and one of the things that UT is embarking on is Planet Texas 2050, and I've not heard any mention of entrepreneurship or opportunities for entrepreneurs to get involved with Planet Texas 2050. Speaking to your point, Bob, about we need to really involve the rest of the state. So I'd like to hear what you think are some of the opportunities within Planet Texas 2050 for entrepreneurs.
I've never heard of Planet Texas 2050.
You have not.
I have not, so you need to.
That's a fantastic example of siloing within the university.
Yeah.
It's a massive effort for UT to adapt to what Texas will be like.
I fight silos all the time. That one got me.
Yeah.
That's why I wanted to kind of explore that. I'm sorry to point that out. That's a big example.
2050?
Planet Texas 2050.
That's far away, 2050.
So you guys need to talk.
Yeah.
It's an awesome opportunity for entrepreneurs, I believe.
I totally agree. And so that's a big narrative of part of a huge capital campaign unfolding for our university right now. Entrepreneurship is another narrative that's less defined than Texas 2050, partially because of the diversity of the ecosystem. But I see it being threaded throughout such ideas. Yeah. Statewide innovations towards environmental goals in the state. Yep.
One more question over here.
Hey, I was just wondering whether the statistics that a lot of universities track are affected by entrepreneurs or students who graduate and start their own companies. So does it affect like job placement or salary stats, which I know have been like historically pretty important for people considering schools and things like that. I was just curious whether entrepreneurship affects that at all.
According to the PitchBook 2017 report, UT has graduated 600 venture-backed startups, I think, who've raised a combined $7 million. So we definitely utilize those statistics when it comes to fundraising efforts around different programs and whatnot. But I mean, tracking-wise, it's kind of a new, yeah.
Yeah, we don't really, we look at the PitchBook report, but our people aren't going to report because they're not running through venture. So, I mean, I think we look at the hiring, we look at where students are, and that's really, you know, it's not down to the degree level. It tends to be at the school level at our school.
Yeah, that's the same with us.
I think what's exciting about entrepreneurship in higher ed right now is that it's still fairly new. And so how to track the various ways in which students might be touched by these programs or experiences, whether it's a formative continuum that defines their entire degree experience or just a one and off and a realization that it's not for them and considering that a success too. I think everyone is defining as we speak what those metrics for success look like, but it is certainly a part of the conversation of where students go from here.
It's not even consistently applied. I don't think UT has an entrepreneurship major, do they?
Not a major.
Right, they have a minor now. So, but they teach entrepreneurship classes. Oh man, they have great programs. So, you know, some schools have majors, some schools diffuse it throughout their curriculum. It's really tough, I think, to figure out how to measure that.
One more question.
info.
I work with Austin Technology Incubator, part of the team, and the stats that they do track, I've been there about 3 months, so I worked through a rebranding with them so they can kind of elevate their knowledge. But they're about 30 years old. Next year they will be. All that time, they've tracked about $3 billion of money raised and about 6,000 jobs that really track those stats. So there's significant impact in terms of, and they look at it across Central Texas, not just Austin. It's significant knowledge that they've made over the past 30 years. It actually
I know something that Florida does called the Gator 100, and they bring together what they consider the top 100 startup founders out of Florida University. We've talked about how to celebrate our startup founders who've been successful, and working with the development department to track our alum across the world who have done incredible things. So that's just something I know that one university is doing.
Ashley, this gentleman's been since the first one. Do you mind this one? Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, there's one segment or stakeholder that's missing when I go around, and that's been the large companies. I personally am concerned that now the new large companies are coming here, they have their innovation labs. They may need to, and they're doing it, I think, to be entrepreneurial, because they become ordinary, and they need their next act. I am concerned, though, what that's going to do to innovation in general, Austin native innovation, that they will have, and they've created a lot of wealth from the last go-around, the so-called internet that we've had. They're going to have. So I am concerned about what the impact's going to be on native innovation.
So we've had this discussion in town quite a bit, that we have become the outsource center for corporate innovation, which has been a great thing. We've had Daimler, Home Depot, Merck, now the military, the Air Force, DIUX, they're all coming through. Goes back to the point we talked about earlier and what Bob had said, we need people to work in these firms. This is one of the reasons we're focusing on educating people about how to do that type of innovative work or innovation work, because those are jobs for our students. And I think they're jobs for the science students as well and the engineering students. So I think they're great. I think the challenge that you're pointing out, which is not an educational challenge, but it's a community challenge, is those are also people that are competing for the resources. And for startups, it's getting more and more expensive to hire. And so I think that's a long-term challenge that'll have to be dealt with. But I think from an academic standpoint, we're trying to make sure we have students ready to fill those gaps. We'd like to get to the point where you don't have to keep importing people from other parts of the company to fill those jobs.
We talk about entrepreneurs. We haven't really talked about intrapreneurs, which I think is sort of what you're referring to. But at Concordia, we also try to work with big companies for us, it's Northwest Austin, so further north than downtown, but who have those groups within the companies who are entrepreneurial and who want to focus on new ideas.
And if you've seen what HEB did recently, they bought one of Favor, a startup here, and now they have a digital innovation center that they're 81,000 square feet they're opening in East Austin, even though they're a San Antonio company. They're opening their digital innovation center here. So that's a big company that's...
Black Locust was bought by Home Depot, and it's become Home Depot's innovation center. So I think there's, we're seeing more and more of that happening.
Thank you all so much for being here. We so appreciate it. Happy Austin Startup Week. Thanks for coming, everyone.
Thank you very much. Thank you.